If I could just get your input on one aspect. A number of our guests here have spoken about the firmness that India has displayed by way of its resolve to the whole tariff crisis that we've been facing over the last few weeks now. But I sometimes wonder, is it really working out? It's this firmness that one might think has perhaps backfired. Do you think the country may have missed a trick or two by not talking earlier or not getting to the negotiating table sooner than they eventually did? Do you think this firmness could well have been, maybe something that India may have wanted to relook at while discussing tariffs with the US President, Swami?
I would say that this particular situation was not thought to be the key stumbling block. The notion was that this is a reciprocal tariffs issue. And the Russian oil thing, well, others were buying it too. But I think we have now come to a stage where our buying of Russian oil is so large, it is crucial to the economy. You will not be able to finesse this away easily. The truth is that if we really stop buying Russian oil altogether, and if we then buy it only from the Gulf and other sources, the price of crude oil will exceed $100 a barrel in no time. In other words, there will be a 50% increase in the price of oil if you don't buy Russian oil. I mean, I don't think they will be able to sell it to other people so easily and so smoothly as we have been doing. So this is a separate issue from the reciprocal tariffs issue. The reciprocal tariffs issue, in some sense, we were trying to manage. I think nobody was quite sure how seriously he would take this, because at one point of time, he looked quite friendly with Mr. Putin. So this huge change has caught us on the wrong foot. However, the question is, what do we do at this point, where what was thought to be a sideshow has become the key issue? As I said, there is no question of being soft good. As far as I can see, we have to buy Russian oil. If we do not buy Russian oil, the price of oil will shoot up. So there is a heavy price will be paid by us, as a matter of fact, for the rest of the world, if Russia cannot find other buyers of our volume. So this is a quandary that we cannot easily get out of. I would say that it would be wrong for India to knuckle in and say, okay, we will try to find oil from other sellers. Because as I said, if we do that, the price of oil will shoot up. We will be having various adverse consequences. And for what and for how long? I mean, I have no idea how long the Ukraine war goes on. Suppose it goes on 2 years. Are we going to deprive ourselves of cheap oil for such a long period? No, I would say, let them put tariffs on us. I mean, I think we should be very, very firm and say, look, as far as we are concerned, when you announced the sanctions, did you consult us? Did you say, we will all get together and decide? No, you on your own decide to put sanctions.
Right,
and
sir.
in effect, you're now putting those sanctions on us. And on this, I think we should be very firm that the way the sanctions were put were unacceptable to us. We therefore found another way around of buying this Russian oil by various other means. But at this point of time, it is inescapable, and we are going to stand firm because there is no question of our 100% giving up on Russian oil. The blow to us would be bad, and the blow to the rest of the world, including the United States, where also prices will go up.
Absolutely. Swami sir, and this is something that experts have stated over and over again, that this tariffs issue doesn't just impact countries, but it impacts the United States economy and, most importantly, Americans themselves. But let me ask you this question. Are these tariffs that have been announced by Donald Trump, this additional 25% duty on India, is that sustainable given the TACO effect? In fact, 50% tariffs is something that he's announced on Brazil as well.
The United States imports from India are a very tiny percentage of United States GDP. And many of those items can be bought from other Asian countries or even African countries at a competitive price. So India has no leverage just on the trade side. We had this, I think, illusion that Mr. Modi has some kind of personal chemistry with Trump. There was never any basis for that. And it was always clear that what Trump was saying was, I am going to make the rest of the world pay for access to the US market, and this will give me a huge amount of taxes. He kept comparing himself with President McKinley, who in 1896, through similar things, he financed the entire spending of the federal government entirely by import duties. And this has been one of Mr. Trump's favorite things. Why don't I just screw the rest of the world for high import duties? So please understand, he's not particularly hitting only India. With some, his aim is to get money from the rest of the world. There is a calculation that they may be able to raise $300 billion per year in import tax revenue, which will hugely ease the problem of their fiscal deficit. It will, in the medium run, be a recessionary move. I think in 2026 will not be a good year for America, because if you have these very high tariffs on everybody else, there will be consequences for the American consumer. So I think Trump's calculations are wrong, just because immediately there is none of these effects. It will always take time for this to work through. The moment Trump got elected, I think all potential importers must have stockpiled huge amounts at cheap prices, saying, let us buy right before Trump's tariffs come in. And you'll find China's exports became a record. Everybody wanted to rush and buy Chinese things before the tariff wars went up. And because of these tariffs, I think, you will not have an impact on American prices until, shall we say, the end of the year. But by the beginning of 2026, I think there will be very significant inflation because of all these policies on America. At that point of time, I think Mr. Trump will be under great pressure to do something. I don't know what he will do. But understand this, he loses very little. His position is, bargaining position very strong. He loses very little. If he puts these large tariffs on India,
right,
we could retaliate. We could retaliate,
right, sir.
But it will hurt America only a very little. So, one way of looking at this simply is that.
Right, sir, but it's not just America. There are a whole host of countries that are now retaliating against the US president. So that remains to be seen. I'd request you to stay on with us, as we're now joined by another guest as well. Dr. Vivek Mishra, the Deputy Director, Strategic Studies Program at ORF, is now joining us. Mr. Mishra, what does this really mean for India-US talks, which was slated to happen on the 25th of this month? A US team was expected to in India. Now, given that tariffs have assumed a larger geopolitical BRICS dimension, what is your reading on what's to happen?
Thank you for having me. I think the talks are still on. If you read between the lines on the executive order, it gives about 21 days. So technically, in the week that is 20th August, the US team is supposed to arrive. So I think the talks are on. But what comes out of it is genuinely the biggest question, because now you have a retaliation and a doubling down from Washington, clearly signaling that they want a certain kind of tariff and a certain kind of geopolitical stance from India to take. And in between these, we see a lot of interim developments. The NSA has gone to Moscow, and there's a series of lined up meetings. For example, EAM is supposed to visit annual dialogue that takes place now, subject to, and then there is, of course, the likelihood of Prime Minister visiting China. So I think diversification will be certainly on the cards. But in the immediate to medium term, the hard landing of these tariffs is something that should concern the Indian markets, as well as the Indian sectors, particularly those that will be impacted because of this tariff.
Dr. Mishra, if I could just also ask you, where do you think the Indian side will go from a strategic standpoint in the immediate future? There's been so much talk by certain experts about having an iron hand in a velvet glove, so to speak, in terms of how we ought to respond. What's your take and analysis? Is that approach viable? Is it something that India will continue to do going forward?
So I think India has signaled enough pretty well that there's no there's no good avenue to an escalation with Donald Trump. We've seen that movie before in the Oval Office with Zelensky and all. You do that when you have leverage. I mean, China retaliated with a 145%, with a over 100% tariff to the United States because they have that kind of leverage with the US. India has just a 45 billion surplus, which is not enough to be acting in that sort. So, but having said that, I think the global south and diversification around the global south axis will continue. I see India reaching out potentially to other partners in terms of diversification, be it Southeast Asia, be it Latin America, where your footprints are scant compared to other regions. I see India in the next 3, 4, 5 years to really look to these regions in terms of how they want to diversify and how they want to engage and embrace these regions. But the escalation ladder with Donald Trump is something that I think India will be cautious of, given one will have to keep in mind what kind of leverage do you have. And around 18% of your exports go to the US. What are the key sectors that will be impacted? And so I'm not surprised that the government's first order of thought is that what are the concessions that we can still make to the US to make this deal happen? And I think that's the first thought that the Indian government will be taking in sort of identifying which sectors can we really make concessions. And remember that this has been our approach since the budget. Starting from the budget in March this year, we've been signaling that this time, unlike the first Donald Trump presidency, we want to be more conciliatory because there's a recognition that there's no big harm in a calculated embrace of the capitalist market that'll open up as a result of a tighter embrace with the United States.
Right, Mr. Mishra, and that remains to be seen. Let me go back to Swami, sir. Swami, sir, Mr. Mishra is mentioning about a very important point, and it remains to be seen which sectors will India be open to negotiating on. We all know that agri, dairy, and GM crops are some of the sectors that India has remained, very protective about, whether it's related to negotiations with the United States or with our other trading partners and the FTAs that we have concluded earlier as well, including the United Kingdom. So what, in your understanding, at this point in time, given that these tariffs are largely directed at India's energy trade with the US, could the United States ask for more trade to be done with the United States? And which other sectors could India be open to negotiating with the US on this upcoming trade deal?
In my opinion, I mean, it is certainly true that we thought a conciliatory stand would work, and it has not worked. So just giving in advance or being soft, it appears does not work. China, which stood up, was rewarded suitably. Various other guys have stood up much more. So I would say at this point, what is the bargaining that you are going to have? As a crowd, you have nothing, because I do not think we should not give up buying Russian oil. So then what is it we can give up? All I can say is, please let us put high retaliatory taxes on America, so that as part of a deal, we can say, okay, we have given this concession to you. Otherwise, if you very limp and say, my God, what more can I do? And then you find you cannot give up on agriculture, which is one of their main objections. Then what is it that you're going to give to the Americans as part of a deal? So I would say, you please put high tariffs and say that as part of the deal, we will knock off those high tariffs, and that can be the basis for a deal.